I think the difference, it's very clear when you do something very theoretically, you're learning the frameworks, you're learning the concepts. But unless you apply those concepts, you really don't understand the depth of it. You don't understand all the nuances that come with the concept, and how you actually apply the concept can be so different for different ideas and different businesses, right? So for a food business, the way I applied the concepts was so different from what I did for my travel business, or now for my consulting business. So it's the practical application, I think, is where 80% of the learning happens. But the theory part is important, and you don't, I mean, having done a degree, I don't necessarily feel like you need to do a degree to get the concepts. You can learn the concepts through many different ways, but 20% of that, the concept piece, is super important too, because if you just jump into business without really having a framework to follow, or just some guardrails, it becomes really difficult. Like, you might just not know what direction you're running in, or how to actually do things. You don't have a roadmap as such, and I suppose that's why the theory part is important. But I'm a big fan of execution, and so for me, 80% of the learning happens when you're practically doing things.
I think and I've recently spoken at an APOC event, and we've done the reverse. And as you know, I studied something completely different to business, but it's been 5 years on now of consulting and helping people with their marketing, and I don't think I've ever had a problem with either getting work or getting clients because of the fact that I didn't study marketing, as an example. And I do think that theory is very important as well, because it does give you a lot of insight. But business change, and as you said earlier, things happen so quickly and business changes so rapidly as well. So I'd love to know, when you started to work with clients in Jumpstart, you were with a framework that you created for them. Could you tell a little bit about what framework you have to enable people to really feel that they've got step-by-step guidance when it comes to starting up a business?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I started working with clients, what I really discovered is a lot of a lot of people say we want a business plan, right? Or, building a business plan and putting something like traditionally a business plan is like a 50, 60 page document that has a lot of jargon in it and has a lot of stuff in it. And executing that 60-page business plan is hard. It takes a lot of effort, right? And then what I learned in my master's degree in entrepreneurship is the more lean way of doing things, the lean canvas, for example, or the business model canvas, which are sort of the new tools to start a business, or to think about your business on a one-page business plan, which is great. I still think there are some flaws in those models as well, but it's a great starting point for a number of businesses. But for a lot of businesses that I was starting to work with then and before, like I went into early stage businesses. I was working with businesses who'd been there for a few years and who were sort of looking at changing things around, and especially because it was during the pandemic, right? And a lot of businesses were struggling because they had brick and mortar kind of setups, or they had like a very offline kind of a setup, and the online piece was missing for a number of them. And so to help them make that transition or make that change into a business that can grow and survive in any condition, and be a bit more futuristic in the way they're looking at things, I found a lot of gaps in the thinking. And so for me, I think that's when I developed a model called the strategy chakra. And this was something I wanted to keep really light and simple, and something that I really wanted people to think about in any business, right? Whether you're a business starting right from scratch, or you're a business who's 5 years in the game and want to lift your game, or if you're a business, you're a corporate business, but you're a team within a corporate, for example, as well. You run as a business, right? You operate as a business unit. So it doesn't matter where you are. This model is quite flexible and sensible in that manner. And it really starts at the heart of things, which is the vision and the values. And a lot of times, like I've had this from a few clients as well, and they think, oh yeah, all that fluff. And I'm like, no, vision and values is not fluff, because if you don't have a vision, if you don't know what you want to build or where you're headed, how are you going to build it? Right. And that's why it's super important to start with that vision values piece and really understand where is this business heading, or what do I want to build out of this structure that I have now, or the idea that I have now. And so it starts with that, and then your business model sort of comes around it. And then there are four sort of external aspects and four internal aspects that every business needs to think about. So the external aspects are the customer. You need to have a customer strategy. You need to have a marketing strategy. So Phoebe, you know all about. And you need a product or service strategy, and you need to understand your competition, right? And these are things that are externally visible to your about your business to your customers. Your strategies have to be in sync, and they have to actually make sense and align, and that's why it's a chakra, because it's all connected with each other. On the internal side, what businesses need to think about are your people strategy. How are you building, are you bringing people on, who are the people you're bringing on, all of those things. Your technology strategy, because in today's day and age, you can't escape that. You have to have a tech strategy for your business. A finance strategy, a lot of times people think of finance as an afterthought, but the reality is budgets, projections, having runways, financial runways are super important for every business. And the fourth one is partnerships, because in today's day and age, partnerships are the surefire way to get ahead in your business. And so these are sort of the eight spokes, I suppose. If your hub is the vision, values, and the business model is your hub, you've got these eight different spokes, all connect to the vision and values, but also then connect with each other. And that's my model that I use when I work with my clients. Is start right at the heart of it, but then as you keep building out the business, as you keep thinking about your growth strategies, you have to have a strategy on all these dimensions.
I love it. I absolutely love that you've got 8 parts of the pie and you've got the internal and the external, because it is all about the balance, and you can't just be working on the marketing or just be on the customer service or just vision and mission and people as well. It's really important to have that all balanced out. So when you're working, and I'm guessing that some of the startups that you work with, they might not necessarily have a team yet, right? And you might even be working with solopreneurs. How do you help them with 24 hours in a day and limited time? How do you help them manage all 8 areas and to find that balance in all of them?
Yeah, I mean it's very subjective, right? And it's business to business. It's obviously, as a single person, it's very hard to do everything, but it's about prioritizing, right? Understanding which one goes first, and how. And because every business is different, like if you were a business that was trying to build, like, say, a SaaS product, which is a software as a service product, there would be certain things that you're going to start focusing on straight away. And things like, for example, your technology will be number one. Your finance could be super important, because SaaS products can be expensive to build and things like that. So although the base, which is your vision, values, and business model, have to come together for every business as a priority, then it's about picking which parts of the spoke are really important for you first, and then the second and the third. So it's prioritizing those. Alternatively, if you were building a business that is very dependent on marketing or your customer, then it's about understanding that you prioritize those things first, because sometimes with some businesses you need to start getting the marketing off even before you have the product ready, to test the market, to see if the market really likes what you have to sell and what you want to build. So a number of different techniques that I use within these with this framework, as well. Prototyping, MVP. I think those things are very well known, but I'm a big fan of a technique called pretotyping, which is pretendotyping. Even before you prototype, like a prototype is a working model of something, of your product or of your offering that you have. But a pretotype is a pretend version of your product. So it doesn't even exist yet. But what you're doing is getting out there and pretending that it exists to test the market, to see if the market really wants what you have to sell. So this is stuff I use for very early stage entrepreneurs, or even for businesses that have already existed but want to sort of say, have a great idea for a new product or a new service line they want to launch. It's like, hey, before you go invest like 50, $60,000 into trying to build something, let's first test if the market wants it, and then we'll go build it.
Important. I absolutely am so aligned with what you're saying here, and I believe that if we're not doing the testing, if we don't understand what the customer wants, and we're all about the product, but it's not a product that necessarily is fitting the gap in the market, or it's not positioned in a way where people understand it very well or connect with it very well, it might not take off as well. And so putting in that time is actually very important. So I love what you do, and particularly, the external facing parts of the business as well, because obviously, I mean, internal is very, very important. But when we're working on the external parts, I do think that research and connecting with the customer, but also getting guidance from experts that have had that experience in the past is very, very important. And so tell us a little bit about, I'd love to know a little bit about, in terms of when you talk about the finance part and the budgeting, what are some of the things that you do with the customer or the client that you work with to help them get that component right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I have a master's degree in accounting, which was my first master's degree. So, numbers is my thing. I also worked in Lufthansa Airlines. That was my very first job, was as the assistant finance controller for Lufthansa Airlines in the West African division, right? And so that is a big part of who I am with the money side of things. And also, like, of the second biggest mistake, like the first biggest mistake that most entrepreneurs make is they don't build things that other people want to buy, right? And this is why we do the testing and all of that we spoke about earlier. But the second biggest mistake, and almost 30% of businesses make this mistake, is financial mismanagement. And this is why it's so important for businesses to start thinking about their finances. It doesn't matter if you're an early stage business, just ideating at the moment, just have this great idea that I'm going to build the world's next light bulb, or whether you're, a business that has been in operation for 6, 7 years. A lot of times, what I find is people think finance is something that the accountants need to do, or they need to hire a CFO to do it. The reality is, if you're an entrepreneur, and if you own a business or a share in a business, even a co-founder, you need to be on top of your numbers, because without numbers, your business is just a hobby, right? And so you really need to understand how you actually get on top of your numbers, having even the basics, like understanding what profit and loss is, understanding all the terms that go inside the profit and loss statement, things like income, revenue, expenses, like what's the difference between those, what is EBITDA, like when you look at a financial statement, there are there's heaps of like abbreviations, or you'll have a lot of jargon in there, like amortization, depreciation, like what does that really mean, and what goes into that. So that's sort of the very basic stuff that I help with. The other part is understanding unit economics, right? So for a lot of people, they think of their balance sheet and their profit and loss statement, and that's it, like and cash flows maybe. These are the three big sort of statements that you need, the financial statements that any business needs to have. But people don't really think about unit economics, like how much is it costing me to acquire a customer, and what is the lifetime value of this customer, how much money is my business making from this customer, how long do I have this customer with me, retention rates, churn rates, break even points. So these sort of things are, a lot of times when I talk to people about these things, I'm like, do you know what this is, do you know what that is? Like, no, never done that or never calculated that, right? So part of my work with them is really to educate them around, just getting on top of the basic numbers, and it's important because a lot of the startups that I work with, especially, want to finally get investors, want to, stand up in front of investors and pitch to them. And they do that, quite often as well. But, when the investor asks you something about your finances, and if you don't know it, the investors lost confidence in you. They don't know if you know how to run your business properly. And so these are the things sort of I help founders, sort of polished up with the founders, their education around financials. I also help them put together like very basic initial projections, budgeting for their business. What is your business going to look like in the next 2 years or 3 years? What sort of revenues can you expect? What sort of expenses can you expect? So are you going to be in profit? Are you going to be in loss? And if you are, then what levers do you need to pull to be able to come back into the green, not be red all the time and things like that. So we do a lot of deep diving into the numbers, and very often I come out of those sessions and people are like, I knew I needed this, but I just didn't know how to do it. So I think an accountant is super important. Working with your financial sort of planner or your financial your CFO for important, but you as an entrepreneur need to have the basic education in finance and understanding what do the numbers really say. So that's the stuff I do on the finance side.
I love that, Sangeeta. I think that, you sound like you are absolutely well versed and an expert in this area and packed with so much background and experience in obviously the corporate world, which would have given you, not only the tools, but also, the foundation and the systems and the steps and having had that, under your belt, that would be very, very helpful for the clients that you now work with. When you are helping or mentoring a business owner, what do you think are some of the, blocks that you've really enjoyed helping them overcome? Would it be the finance, or have there been other areas where it's just been a really beautiful moment of seeing them kind of get through that block or that roadblock and get to that aha moment?
Yeah, I mean, there's been quite a few, right? So because I'm quite a generalist, I don't limit myself to a certain domain, and I have this huge appetite for learning things, and I learn things very quickly. So which is why I'm able to add a lot of value on many dimensions to my customers. It's not just one or the other, and this is why the whole strategy chakra piece, like all the pieces I mentioned, are pieces I add value on right at the beginning with most customers in most industries as well. And I think for me, what I really enjoy seeing customers having that aha moment with is the customer side of things. I think, for any business, the two key important things are you and your customer. There are shareholders, there are other stakeholders that come into play, your suppliers and all of that, and that is all great. But if you don't have a customer, you don't have a business. And so it's really about how do you shape your customer strategy? How do you actually get in front of customers and grow? And then on the other hand, so things like customer discovery, if I was to be specific, customer discovery, really understanding your demographic, who your customer is, how do you work with your customer, how do you position yourself in the market with your customer? So that touches on a few marketing aspects as well. Another thing that I found with a lot of my clients, especially the ones who are, really early stage and are ideating, and then I give them, a roadmap. We work out, what are next steps and things like that. They're usually quite enthusiastic to go and get things started and get done. But people who've probably been in business for a while and have, dealt with a lot of that initial stuff, they sort of get into a comfort zone after a point in time. And so when you reach that 3 or 4 years into your business, that kind of a mark, that's where what I find is when I work with them as a consultant, and I sort of help them do the whole strategy side of things, the execution is where the trouble is. And how okay, this is all great, fantastic, I love the whole strategy, I love where we're headed, but Sangeeta, how do I do this? Or how can you do it for me? That is the question I get asked the most. And so just like, about 6 or 7 months ago, I started a done for you service for a lot of my customers. And what that really means is, I do things for them right from product development to SEO, to the marketing, to, website, maintenance and website development. And so sort of still on the customer side of things, but it's sort of how do you now translate the strategy piece, the whole, oh, this looks amazing, this roadmap looks great, but the execution of that roadmap is something I've started working with them on as well, because I see that as a big challenge for a number of people, is how do you get it done? And so while I don't do it hands on, I've got teams that sit in different parts of the world that help with this. And, I work with them as a partner because, like I said, partnerships are immensely important in a business. I'm a great expert at telling you what to do and how to do it, like the pieces and how they need to fit together. But I may not be an SEO expert, right? For example, or I'm not somebody who I can build a basic website, but I'm not a web developer. So, I then go out and work with these other people in partnership to help my clients then also get.
I love that, Sangeeta, and it sounds very similar to, how I kind of went from Thrive and Shine coaching to Thrive and Shine Co. Because the co was when we, like you say, brought in partnerships and people and external people, but people that we still work very closely with on, for example, the strategy or the vision or the visual aspects of the website or the copywriting of the campaign or the design. And I love that. Similar to myself, you are helping not only just with pointing people in the right direction, but also giving them that, the ability to, or the option to have that outsourced. Because I do think as business owners, we need to be very careful and selective with what projects we take on. And not everything is something that we should do ourselves. You mentioned SEO. That is definitely something that if you're not, a very tech person, or if you're not very, say, for example, good with web development or coding or, all the technical sides of it, you might be very good at blogging, but you might not want to take on SEO as something, as a tool that you want to, learn and do yourself. So there are things that, there are lots of various ways that, you can still grow your business without having to hire. And I think, services like the one you've just mentioned are very important for people to navigate and get it done in a very quick and efficient amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Sangeeta, if there was one big lesson that you've learned in your own business that you would like to share with the business owners that are listening to this podcast today, or the future CEOs and founders and business owners, what would that one lesson, or what would be the message that you would want to share?
Very good question. There's heaps of lessons. But if there was one big one, I would say, look, I think it's your mindset plays the most important role in, whether you're transitioning from a corporate career into business. Because for me, I think that is where the big difference or the big change came about when I first, went into uni, started studying entrepreneurship. My last role was at ANZ Bank, and I was a director at ANZ Bank. I had large teams, global teams that I was managing, 120 people. And it was a $30 million, large transformation project and things like that. So I had a lot of responsibility, but I also, it came with a title, right? Director. And that title director opened a lot of doors for me in a lot of places. The minute I would say, this is who I am, I'm a director of this program at ANZ, it would open doors for me. People would willingly give me time. But when I became an entrepreneur, transition into being a founder, my first basic thing was to get out there on the street to customers, right? So the first week of my entrepreneurship program, they threw us in the deep end and said, you have a week, pick a team among the people that are in this cohort and go build a business. Any idea, doesn't matter, just go try it. Within a week, get customers, and by the end of the week, you're pitching to investors for the business. So we had 1 week to go from nothing to having something to pitch to investors. And as part of that journey, one of the things we had to do was to get out and talk to customers on the streets. And one of the business that we wanted to build at that time was called Wall Space, and it was about utilizing wall spaces in the city for light projection advertising for small businesses. So our customers were small businesses, and we wanted to sort of go out and do a bit of customer discovery around that. And standing on the streets talking to people, the director title really didn't matter. If I said I'm a director at AN, it had nothing to do with what I was trying to build as a business, and it had nothing to do with what I was trying to, learn from those customers. And so the biggest mindset shift really is, as an entrepreneur, you must make a lot of different moves, and you probably have to that is very different from what you are in a corporate space, to start changing your mindset and start building something from the ground up. And I mean, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but be cautious about the employee mindset creeping in, because a lot of times we think of we're risk averse as employees. We have a safety net of a job and having, like, a regular, and so entrepreneurship might seem very daunting, but it is one of the most fun things you can do in life, and it is one of the best experiences you can have in life, is becoming an entrepreneur and actually chasing your dreams and building a legacy, building something that you can leave the world and that can impact people's lives and livelihoods. And I suppose if you come with that lens and are prepared to do the hard work, shift will keep happening. And I think that is probably the biggest, that is just keep going. If you love doing it, just keep doing it. And you will see it changes everything around you. So I don't know if that's a lesson or not, but it's really one thing that happened to me was that mindset shift. And I think that is something, I would just say to everybody is, that's a big part of business, and I love it. I'm sure you love it too.
Oh, that is such a wonderful answer. Thank you so much, because I totally agree. I think it's absolutely riveting, and every day or every week can be an adventure of its own, depending on our perspective and also what we do with it. Now, Sangeeta, this now brings us to the rapid fire questions. I have 4 questions to ask you, because we have actually just covered the last one, the 5th one that I normally ask. But do you mind if we go through just 4 really quick questions so our audience get to know you a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll start with the first one. If there was one thing that you cannot live a single day without, whether it's something physical or non-physical, what would it be?
I couldn't live without, I would say, food. I'm a big foodie, and I love having variety in my food. So if I had to eat bland food every day, that would be very. So I need, like, interesting, good, tasty food.
I love that. We have not had that on the show yet, and I'm actually very surprised we haven't had that answer. Thank you. I love food as well, and I'm a big fan of variety. So that's good to hear. Sangeeta, what or who inspired you to do what you do today, whether it's in business or just in your career overall in general? What's been or someone or something that has inspired you?
I think my biggest inspiration comes from both of them. I think, they, I think at the beginning of the show was, both my parents are in business, and my mom started her business at 31. And she went on to be a serial entrepreneur, many things, and and she was 50, she retired, she made a heap of money, and she exited her businesses very successfully. And, she became very popular and was very, very successful. And she was like this rapid fire, let's done and at 50 done and out. And then my dad, on the other hand, is somebody who started his business at 21, 20. And he's still going. He's in his 60s now. His business, 42 years of operations this year. And for 42 years,
Wow.
he's been consistent at what he's been doing, and just, and he has been successful. And the fact that, I get recognized, we come from a, I was on a flight to Amsterdam a couple of years ago, and somebody was like, "You're Kishore's daughter," and I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like, so I get recognized by my dad's name in many places. So sitting in a very small town in India, he's consistently built a very successful business by just being consistent at it for 42 years. I inspire me the most in business.
Oh, that's so cool. It makes so much sense. Both my parents are in business as well, and I think both of them do it very differently and have very different styles. And it's such a small world in a way that now that you think about it, but with such a big population in India, I can imagine your father would be quite well known. So that's awesome. Sangeeta, where do you see your business or yourself in 5 years' time? What do you want to have had accomplished?
Um, the goal is, if I can impact and change, that would be my goal in 5 years, if you ask me. I think for me, that is the very reason I enjoy the consulting. It's my zone of genius. Like, I can see the impact every day that I'm making with my mentees. I get from them in the change that it has made to their makes in their life, and just how it changes them as individuals in their business or even as people. And I think that I enjoy the most is helping people grow and change and seeing them reach their full potential. And for me, I think also the reason I've written a book, because a book can have me one-on-one with people, versus a book can reach more people. And then building on that with online courses and things that can just reach as many people, with the knowledge and experience that I have, as much as I can give out into the world, people better their lives. I think that would be.
I love that. That's fantastic. And lastly, what is one lesson or takeaway that you've learned recently that has changed the way you do things?
I think the one lesson I learned. So the last 2 weeks, or the end of April, early May, I spent weeks in India, and this was I was visiting people to understand a bit more about I was visiting partners that I was working with, but also visiting some new people in India and seeing how I can help into a country that I've come from. So I've lived in Australia for 14 years now. Being able to go back and give into the country that you were born and raised in is super important. And one of the things that I learned very rapidly when I was in India conversations was that the world has changed so much in these developing countries, and like they're small. Everyone's dreaming big, and I think is dream bigger. Don't limit yourself. There's a lot of times we tend to limit ourselves in how what we want to accomplish, or what we want to achieve in life. And I think for me, the biggest lesson in the last few weeks has been dream bigger. The world around you, you've just got to keep dreaming bigger with them to help make.
Sangeeta, thank you so much. Your episode is one that I've really enjoyed. I've loved hearing about, not only your lessons, but also your experiences. And I absolutely am thrilled, and so thrilled to get this out to my audience through the Conscious Business podcast. If there's anyone that would like to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to find you? Would it be LinkedIn or your website? We will make sure to also put it into our show notes as well.
Yeah, perfect, because I'm very active on LinkedIn. So please do. LinkedIn, I love connecting with people. And the one thing you should know about me is I never say no, because I believe in the power of yes. And I think the more yes you can say in this world, the more opportunities open up. So I will never say no to a chat or a coffee, or so come connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy to chat.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sangeeta, for your time and sharing your wisdom. And I look forward to chatting with you soon.
Thanks, Phoebe. Thanks for having me.